Hey everybody, it's Josh Ronquist here for Heavy Debriefings, and it's time to talk about the top 10 albums of 2013. And now that I look at it, there's only 9 episodes of this series left. Only 9 series left to talk about the rest of my life in music form? That is quite scary. But thankfully, there's 10 great albums here for a year that was some of the greatest moments and some of the worst moments of my entire life. So let's get right into it with number 10. Coming in at number 10 is In Vain with Enigma, the third of 4 albums from the band, at least currently, and my favorites of all 4. This album just had everything that I was looking for. It's the proggiest of all 4 albums. It gets into the most extreme territories with the black and death metal sounds behind it. It's just some of the most well-crafted songs the band has ever done, with magnificent production, epic choruses, skills up the yin-yang. Everything that you're looking for in this particular style of music is on this album. And I really wish the band was bigger than they are. I know with their latest album, which is now 5 years old, the band started picking up a lot of steam. And unfortunately, it's been 5 years since the last album, and I really hope that they could pick back up on that. Maybe one day. But until then, they have 4 incredible albums, but I still think that you should check out Enigma first, and then choose your route to check out the rest of them. At number 9, it's Clutch with Earth Rocker. Easily, without question, my favorite Clutch album. And that is also a hard thing to say as well, because they have so many great classic albums. But with this one, it's their heaviest, it's some of their fastest work, and it goes by so quickly that it has that instant replay value. As soon as it's done, you're going to start it all the way over from the beginning. From the title track all the way till the Wolf Kindly Requests, every song on here is perfect with just one slower song, Gone Cold. And it's right smack dab in the middle of the album, so it's fast, a little bit of slow, fast, and then you just repeat. If you need a Clutch album to get into first, this is that album. And then be able to go whatever direction you feel like going into. But seriously, this is top tier peak performance of Clutch in the best hard rock, blues rock, stoner rock, almost metal feel that they were always capable of. Coming in at number 8 is the Black Dahlia Murder with Everblack. This album helped me out so much when it came out, and it is easily my favorite Black Dahlia Murder album. And sadly, I just haven't been able to put them so far into the series, and I'm not sure if they're gonna appear in the rest of the series, but at least I got them on here once. Now, there might be favorite songs off of other albums, but to me, this feels like the most consistent, perfect Black Dahlia Murder album that they've made. And it covers so much ground of what I love. The speed, the lyrics, the technicality. There's so much to love about this album. I wish I could have saw them on this tour. Unfortunately, that just never got to work out. But this album just simply rules. And again, while there might be better songs on other albums, this is the most consistently awesome album in their discography. And if you don't believe me, whether you're a longtime fan, only heard of them, or never heard of them before, check out Everblack and see if it changes your mind. You might feel the same way that I do. Coming in at number 7 is Steven Wilson with The Raven That Refused to Sing and Other Stories. And it's kinda sad to say this. Not only is this the last time that Steven Wilson's really going to be showing up on this list, but it's also the last Steven Wilson album I really enjoy from start to finish. And I say that as someone who defends To the Bone, a more popular version, like almost a polar opposite musically album than this one. This one is arguably the darkest album Steven Wilson has ever written. And I say that when he's written things like Dead Wing and In Absentia. This has just some of the saddest songs you'll ever hear, like the pain of remembering losing your wife in a car accident, or a mother dealing with the loss of her kids in a school shooting. Yeah, not exactly the cheeriest album in the world, is it? But thankfully, if you're into prog, it has some of the greatest prog moments of the 2010s on this album. And of course, that comes from all of the musicians that are a part of this album, including Steven Wilson himself. It's dark, it's sad, it's depressing, but it's also uplifting and cathartic at the same time, because that's what sad music does if you let it sink in. And if you want to hear Steven Wilson at his absolute saddest, that almost makes Porcupine Tree sound like pop music, in comparison, you need to check this album out. Coming in at number 6 is Killswitch Engage with Disarm the Descent. The first album back with Jesse Leach on vocals, and easily the most angry album the band has ever done. This thing is just ferocious. Every song on here is just filled with pure anger, and there's so much of that for many different reasons. One, the many mental health struggles of Jesse Leach. Two, the rest of the band angry about how Howard Jones left the band. 3, the position the band was in for so many different reasons. 4, the state of the world. You take all of that combined, and you create some of the best music the band has ever done. While the music wasn't written with Jesse Leach in mind, he definitely made all these songs his own, and it just creates a musicality that is just almost beyond anything that they've ever done at that point. And while this is probably the last album that you'll see of Killswitch in this series, I think it's one that's absolutely worth deserving to be heard. And if you've always blown off Killswitch Engage for whatever reason, check this album out, especially if you're a fan of heavier music, because this album might change your mind on the band. I can't guarantee it will, but this one might. Give it a shot. Coming up at number 5 is KOdots with Hubardo, and this band is the follow-up band to Maudlin of the Well. Toby Driver and company, some members of Maudlin, other brand new members went on to form KOdots, and there's been several member changes, past, present, and future. But this particular album in 2013, their double disc concept album, is probably the most ambitious album the band has ever put out. If you like what Maudlin of the Well did, this is a much longer, expansive version of that. It's avant-garde to the absolute definition. It's got great atmospheric moments, it's got black metal moments. My favorite use of blast beats is on this album. Like, every other metal drummer in the world does blast beats, either good, great, grand, wonderful, but my favorite use of blast beats is in the song, particularly in the song Passing the River, where it feels like an absolute buzzsaw, which is how I think all drummers need to do blast beats. I want to hear more people do it this way, but I digress. This entire album is not for the faint of heart. For some people, it's going to think it's the band going up its own ass. For some people, it's very self-indulgent, which I don't really think is a term, and I really should make a video on that to really get my thoughts out on people saying self-indulgence. But this really categorizes everything. Like, anyone who says that they love every kind of music out there is, oh, I love everything. Show them this particular album and see if they still feel that way. For me, I love this album, and it's my favorite KOdot album. But for others, this is a voyage they may not want to take, so enter at your own risk. Coming up at number 4 is one of my favorite melodeath albums of all time, from Carcass in Surgical Steel. This is easily the best Carcass album, and I say that knowing damn well how influential Heartwork is. And there are those very strange people out there who prefer the first couple albums where you literally can't understand what is going on in the production. I don't know why they recorded it that way, and I know that influenced so many grindcore bands, but that is just not my bag. But Surgical Steel in 2013, one of the best melodic death metal albums ever made, and it encapsulates all of what Carcass is known for. It has those great grindcore moments, which I love grindcore when it's done right, but it's actually with good production, so you can actually hear what the hell is going on. It's got hard rock moments that remind you of Swan Song and their next album, which is almost Swan Song Part 2, but there's so much melodic death metal that's going on throughout this album that just feels fierce and ferocious and exactly what we needed in 2013. I thankfully got to see Carcass during this time. They played pretty much every song I would have wanted to hear, and for that reason, I'm not sure if I ever need to go see Carcass again because I saw them at the best they possibly could be. But yes, if you want to know what Carcass is all about, pick up Surgical Steel, check it out, love it, enjoy it, and go check out the rest of their discography, whether you like the hard rock stuff, the melodic death metal stuff, or if you are that adventurous, the grindcore stuff. Not my bag, but hey, if it's yours, it's yours. Coming in at number 3 is Shaded Enmity with Forsaken and Forgotten, the final album from this band, the band that I discovered, or the album that I discovered the band on, and one of the last guest appearances from Worldane of Nevermore. Well, of course he did do more vocal work. I mean, he obviously recorded one more Sanctuary album and was working on his solo album. For guest work, this was one of his last appearances on the song And Life Was Great, which features one of my favorite riffs of all time. This band is absolutely mind-blowing for everything that they're capable of. It's so severely emotional. Some of the lyrics make you giggle, or at least the song titles can make you giggle at times. Other times, it just hits exactly what you need it to, and it's got some of the most mind-blowing musicianship that you may ever hear. These guys really had something special going on, and it's sad that the rest of the band kind of fell apart. The main songwriter of the band has been releasing a few singles over the last couple years. I really don't see the band coming back, but it's cool to see that at least in some way, shape, or form, the band is still kinda going. But with this being the final album from the band, they just left it all on the table. It's some of the most extreme music that has melody and harmony behind it that you will hear. And it's a very underrated album unless you live in the Pacific Northwest. So, as someone from Minnesota, I'm lucky I even found this album. But seriously, you should check this album out if you want some extreme, emotional, melodic death metal mixed in with some technical and progressive death metal and just a couple wacky things here and there. It is absolutely worth your time. Coming in at number 2 is not only my favorite Finnish band, but my favorite melodic death metal band of all time, Omnium Gathering with Beyond. This was the first album that I heard from the band. I absolutely love this band, and I don't think they get enough love. I mean, obviously, when you have members from Insomnium, of course Insomnium's going to take a bit more of a pole position, but Omnium Gathering does everything that I love about melodic death metal. It's got the melodic death metal in spades, but it really focuses on the melodies and the harmonies. Some of the most beautiful, gorgeous riffs that you will ever hear are in this band in some way, shape, or form, especially when it comes to the metal side of things. I guess it also helps that Dan Swano was a part of this album and actually contributes some vocals to their cover of Rush's Subdivisions. So if you ever want to hear Dan Swano sing Rush, check this album out. But yeah, this album just encapsulates everything that I love about melodic death metal. I didn't know I needed this album until I heard this album, and while there's so much great melodic death metal out there, Omnium Gathering will always be my favorite. And while this isn't even my favorite Omnium Gathering album, I'll probably be talking about that later, this is one that is absolutely worth your attention. And finally at number 1, my favorite album of 2013 is of course Witherscapes' The Inheritance. The debut album from Dan Swano is perfect for anyone that wanted more of the progressive death metal, melodic death metal side of Edge of Sanity, but much proggier. This concept album and the next concept album, which I guarantee will be talked about, are two of my favorite albums in these styles of progressive melodic death metal. Of course, you have Dan Swano's absolutely insane clean vocals. You have two very interesting concept albums that are going on throughout this, but The Inheritance in particular is the kind of album that is meant to be heard in rotation, which I find to be really cool because it starts off the same way it ends, so it feels like you can play it in a loop and it constantly goes round and round and round. But everything in between is just so perfect. And of course, the lead single from the album, Dead for a Day, is pretty much one of my sad battle cries. And when you listen to the lyrics, I think you'll understand why, especially if you know me personally. But yeah, just absolutely spectacular progressive death metal done to perfection. And of course, that's going to happen when you deal with Dan Swano. And if you want to see why I love Dan Swano so much, check this album out. And there you go, folks, my top 10 albums of 2013, one of the best and worst years of my entire life. So what do you think? Did I leave any albums out? Do you just want to crap on me for my own personal opinions? Did you find some albums that you've never heard of before that pique your interest? Let me know all of that and more down below in the comments. And of course, like, share, subscribe, do all of that stuff that I really, really hate talking about because I just want this video and every video that I do to have some good natural reach behind it. I want everyone who is interested in these kind of things to be able to check it out. And until the top 10 albums of 2014, another top 10 list, interview, review, or any other kind of video that I put up here on the Heavy Debriefings YouTube channel. For Heavy Debriefings, it's Josh Runk was saying, see ya.